This is an old iPhone XR, and in this video I'm going to be shooting and editing a short film using just this old phone. And when I say I'm using just the phone, I mean just the phone. Normally when shooting with a phone I'd be using lots of filters, lenses, I'd have it on a gimbal. I'm not using any of that stuff, nothing at all. I'm not even going to be using a tripod. Now the reason I'm doing this is because gear acquisition syndrome is a real thing. And I think it holds a lot of creators back, waiting for that next piece of equipment that they think they need. So first of all, we're going to watch the film, everything shot and edited just on the old iPhone XR. After the film, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I did it and show you some of the stuff that I did, how I shot it and edited it, that kind of thing. And then we're going to have a little bit more of a chat about gear acquisition syndrome, and I'm going to tell you how I believe you can get past that and start creating right now. Okay, so let's go. Here's the film, all shot on this.
It's like there's two people living in the same head, a direct juxtaposition leaving everything unsaid. One the artist full of passion who longs to be creating, the other the consumer always procrastinating. That new camera, that new lens, that new filter, that new drone, but we're defined by what we do, not by the objects that we own. So the tug-of-war continues between hesitance and art, but there's one thing that's for certain, one of these two must depart. Stop pretending you need more, it's time to put aside that fear. Always scrolling, always searching for that next expensive gear. Cause your voice needs to be heard and the world is passing by as you hide behind that excuse of that thing you need to buy. Don't be sidelined or distracted, don't be left up on the shelf. Don't become a voiceless 2D transparency of yourself. Cause in the end you'll realise when it's much too late, the only thing we leave behind is what we create. The only thing we leave behind is what we create.
Okay, what do you think? So, let's look a little bit about how I did that. First of all, with the shooting, I used Filmic Pro. Now, the reason for this is because it gives me manual control over my frame rate and my shutter speed. I shot everything at 48 frames a second because it conforms well onto my 24 frames a second timeline. I set my shutter speed to 1/96, and that way I could also drop it down to half speed to give a nice slow-mo effect if I wanted to. For editing, I used lumafusion. Now, there was a little bit of a learning curve adapting to the smaller screen. It's a little bit more fiddly, but as regular viewers to the channel will know, lumafusion has quickly become our go-to app for video editing because we're doing a lot more editing out on location now. So whenever the weather changes, as it does very often here in the UK, we just get back in the truck, whip out the iPad Pro and start editing whatever project we're working on. Now lumafusion works exactly the same on the iPhone as it does on the iPad. And to be honest, while the small screen took a little bit of getting used to, it really didn't take that long to adapt. I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm actually getting quite out of breath walking up this hill. It's a lot steeper than it looks. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the effects I used. For the cloning effect, I simply put my phone on the floor, just leant it up against my gloves, filmed myself getting out of the car and standing there for a minute. Then I quickly took my hat and coat off, walked around the car from the other side, stood there for a minute, and then in lumafusion I simply cut the clips up, put one on top of the other and used the crop function inside frame and fit. For the green screen effects, the zoom in green screens, I literally just took a screenshot of the timeline in lumafusion, used the iPhone marker on the screenshot to just colour in a bit of green, and then just keyed out the green in lumafusion and used frame and fit with keyframes to do the zoom ins. What other effect did I use? Oh yeah, the transparency type effect where I faded away at the end. That is simply put my phone on the floor again, I think I leant it up against my gloves or my hat or something, shot the scene for a couple of seconds, the empty scene, and then just filmed myself walking across it. And then in lumafusion on the iPhone, I just split the clip, went into edit and used keyframes to alter the opacity on the clip above. To record the voiceover, the vocals, I actually used the iPhone's voice memo app and just sat in the front seat of the truck and recorded it. The only thing I did to the voice was I dropped off the lows using a high-pass filter with LumaFusion's graphic EQ. Now, normally when I record vocals, I do a bit more EQing and use compression, but it really didn't need it. And I'm very critical of any kind of audio, EQs, compression, anything like that. But the LumaFusion graphic EQ did a great job. Okay, so let's talk about why I made this video using just the old iPhone XR. Well, as I said at the beginning, gear acquisition syndrome is a real thing, and I really believe it holds creators back. Don't forget, we're defined by what we do, not by what we own, not by what we buy, not even by what we say. A filmmaker is somebody who makes films. A photographer is somebody who takes photographs. The gear that we use is just a tool to help you express yourself creatively. It's the result that matters. It's the result that you'll be judged on, not the equipment you use to achieve that result. So let's get down to the reality of why people have this gear acquisition syndrome, why they hold themselves back and put off creating until they get that next piece of gear. Really, I think it's an excuse. I think it's an excuse because you believe you're not good enough, and you think that by owning this really expensive camera or this really expensive drone, you'll be able to make the type of content that your favourite content creators make. Well, I've got some bad news for you. It won't. You can't buy talent. And there is absolutely no substitute for making mistakes when it comes to getting great at something. Here's something to think about. When Jimi Hendrix first picked a guitar up, he didn't know how to play it. Think about that for a minute. At one point in his life, Jimi Hendrix didn't know how to play the guitar. But what he did is he picked up that guitar and he just started playing, and he played and played until he got great. Imagine how many mistakes he made during that process. And I guarantee the guitar that he learned and became great on was not an expensive one. The fact is, the device you're watching this on right now contains more sophisticated tech than Alfred Hitchcock had when he was literally creating the art form of cinema as we know it today, when he was pioneering the art form of visual storytelling using a camera. He had access to less technology than you have access to right now. The only way you're going to start is by starting, and the fact is you are good enough because all art is of equal value. It's all priceless and it's all timeless because it's creative expression. So you want to know how to get over gear acquisition syndrome? Use what you've got. Use whatever you have available to you right now and master it. Start right now making mistakes and getting better. Okay, that's it for now. If you found this video useful, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That would be really, really helpful to us and massively appreciated. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Stop buying gear and use what you've got. Start now.